Hello, me lovelies. Well, this is my review for A New Breed of Criminal. I've just watched it and literally you're getting my response now after freshly watching it, and I've made notes on it. Now, let me just make one thing clear from the start. This is not the type of film or genre of film I'd watch normally. I just wouldn't. Because it's just doesn't do it for me. Unless it's The Godfather or Goodfellas, which are the product of genius directors and writers. I mean, genius. Them I like because, they're really gritty stuff. This film's people should know before watching is about the life of Stephen Sayers, who I still don't know much about, other than know that people I talk to, like Steve Wraith and others, I've heard the name, but I couldn't tell you what he'd ever done. So one thing that was interesting about the film, I actually found out what he's known for, which I didn't before know what he was known for. And I can't say that it endeared him to me, what he is known for. But I really wanted to like this film because I saw the reviews, and some of the reviews I think are just purposely put on there to destroy the film. But I'm going to give my honest opinion here. But I have to be aware, and as a watcher, I was aware of the fact that if I found it tedious or didn't find it interesting, that's because I personally do not find the subject matter entertaining or interesting. So bear that in mind, and I'm trying to keep that in mind. So I'm just going to go on about the film itself, the effect. Cameras were top quality, but as I'll discuss, you can have top quality equipment, but if the person that's actually in charge of them isn't top quality themselves, you know, it's not worth having them. And there were times when it showed that the cameraman was either being rushed and couldn't do retakes or just wasn't a good cameraman. Anyway, the overlook of the film was effective me. It's nice cinematography, if that's the term you want to choose. It opens with Daisy Des, I think it is from East End. I think it was him being the narrator. Now this was the thing that put me off the film as it went on. There was a lot of narration, explaining things, a lot of narration. Now sometimes that can work in a film, but if you see the vast majority of films, I'd say over 99%, they don't have a narrator in there. And there's a reason for that. Because it can end up looking like a drama that you'd see on television or on YouTube. Especially with YouTube now where people are doing documentaries about people. It doesn't look like a proper, to use the terms, using the term, proper film, if I can say it like that. Anyway, one thing that people kept on going on about, and also in the reviews, was the policeman. Yet the policeman's outfits were not appropriate to the time period. This is nothing that it wasn't era appropriate. It starts off with Steve says when he's a kid, but there's things like in the kitchen. There's a modern microwave. And this happens throughout the film, like the policemen's uniforms don't fit for one, but the modern uniforms and the panda cars are modern panda cars. So you're thinking, wait a minute, it's which age? You're never sure what decade or era you're talking about because attention isn't paid to that detail. Most probably because the budget didn't stretch that far to bring in these things where it would look like it was being filmed at the time period. Anyway, that was off put. But the policeman, the biggest thing I found about the policeman, and more so about them than anyone else in the film, was the act. These are not actors, you can tell that straight away. These are people that have just been brought in that Steve Wraith knows or someone else knows. I know, do you want to be in this film? Yet be in this film. Not a wise move to make if you want a professional looking film. Because the acting of the police officers came across as this. I'm the villain. His spoo. It was very over the top. cheesy acting. They were the bad guys, you know. That's what it came across as. There was one scene in it which was, I found very comical, was where the young boy Stephen says is taken into a custody suite, and you could tell it had been filmed on someone's landing. There were stairs going up here and stairs going down there. I've never seen stairs like that in a custody suite for one good reason. It's not a good idea when you're bringing in violent criminals to be put in the holding cells to have steep stairs going down there. You have to lead them down there because they can tend to kick an officer down there, custody officer down there, and break their neck, you know. So that, things like that would have been strange. But I'd say the worst one that I found, which I actually knew about, was going to happen months ago, because Steve Wraith released a picture of the judge in the courtroom scene, and I looked at it and I thought, that can't be the wig he's wearing. Surely to God that's not the wig he's wearing. I don't know, and I hate saying this because I like Steve Wraith. I don't know what the hell's going through your mind, Steve, but it was obviously you know, one of those dress up, you know, when you go to a party, people go to parties, it is one of those fancy dress judges wigs that you get off Amazon for about a tenner or so. I remember ages ago, God, years ago, talking to the producers of Elizabeth, and they said when they were making that film, they really wanted to do the battle scene between the English Navy and the Spanish Armada because it was vital to Queen Elizabeth I's reign. But they knew they didn't have the budget for it, and it would come off looking khaki if they tried to do it. So instead of doing that, they binned that idea, and they decided to do it in the film as a theatre production in front of the Queen, to present to her, to say how magnificent her navy was, and it was only magnificent because she was. And they pulled it off brilliantly. Wayne Sleep was in that scene. Now, they waited until the second film, the Golden Age, Elizabeth the Golden Age, then they put the battle scene in there. They got because they had the budget. If you can't pull a scene off properly, it's best just to reinvent it and come up with something else that you can afford. But I can't see why a judge's wig, a proper judge's wig, would have been too much for the expense. I'm sure you can hire them. You can hire them. I've seen them in theatre productions. I've seen them on television productions. But choosing something that literally looks like a blonde curly wig, that I found very difficult to accept, and I thought, that's not a good move, that. Now, as I say, there was money. You can tell there was a lot of money spent on this, and I have to be careful because I don't know Steve Wraith and I don't know his life, so I can't pass a judgment. Was this true? Was this a true representation? So that I have to go by on, because I might be getting confused with things because I simply don't know who he is, or I don't know what he's famed for, but I have an idea now what it is. The lighting was not the best I've seen. It was okay for the majority of the film, but in some indoor scenes it was very dark. I don't know if they were using the natural lighting in the set they were in, or the scene they were in, or what was going on, but I'd say worse than that was the camera operator. The camera in action shots was jerking. Now sometimes they'll use that jerky motion purposely to get the drama going, but in this you could tell it wasn't done for that. It was that the camera, I'd imagine, didn't have a stabilizer on it, and yet you can tell they were using expensive cameras. This was not filmed on cheap cameras, and usually have a stabilizer on them. They either wear it on the shoulder, big harness for this, or the cameraman has it down here, and when they're moving, it moves so that you don't get that jerk. You'll get the speeding because, of course, the cameraman's moving with the action, but with this, you could tell it wasn't on the stabilizer. It was just jump, 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 jump. Another thing about the lighting was there was one scene with Danny Christie in it where they're having a boxing match. Sorry, my screen's just gone. I'm talking about lighting. My screen just goes blank when I'm looking at it. There's one scene with Danny Christie, and I think it was Paul Vance. Now, I think it was Danny Christie, and I think it was Paul Vance. I don't know because it was that dark. Now, whether this was my television or not, I don't know. But it was very dark, that scene, and they're struggling. I managed to see Donna Humble because of the blonde hair, and I got a quick shot, but you have to be very quick. If you blink, you'll miss Humble Dryer standing next to her. But that scene goes off, and you can't really see what's going on because it's too dark. But let's go back to me. I just want to see what my notes say. Yeah, I don't know if I just mentioned this before. The detectives who are investigating or watching Stephen Sayers throughout this film, their acting was bad as well. It was just corny acting. It came across like a badly acted episode of The Bill when you seen them coming on. It was like, and she's looking and she's like, I've never seen in all my time a police officer or a detective going like this. And all this was, yes, and we have to watch this person. Do you know what? It was like I don't know what it was, but there was a strange version of how police officers actually act. It was overdone that with the police officers. I said the acting on a whole was, well, this is the problem you have, right? You can't always blame the actors. They're relying on what the direction is, whoever's directing the scene. They have to rely on that. So you can get a very competent actor who can be made to look absolutely awful with a bad director. That's the thing of it, or a bad script. Now, my view as someone who didn't know Stephen Sayers and watching it, the script was good in the sense it did go through the periods of his life to explain what he did, like he robbed this place, he robbed that place. So it was good. The script writing was good in that way. The narrator, I say, got on my nerves, but that's my personal feeling. I didn't like the narrator jumping in all the time. But it didn't endear me to Steve Wraith either. There's one scene where it's the pivotal scene where it's like, oh, we've got to get people on board with Stephen Sayers here. And he's standing talking, I think it's Frankie, that somewhere abroad. And he's talking to this Frankie fella. And it's like, I'm doing this for my family, because family matters and all this. Then a few scenes down the line, he's running in somewhere with guns and all this, rifles. Not giving a damn of the effect that will have on the people there. That they could be left with PTSD because of their experience and struggling to go back to work. And how will that affect their families? So it's like, I'm doing this for my family, but I don't give a damn the effect of what I do to others, terrifying the life out of them, because they could be killed. They don't know, they think they might be shot at any point. So that was a bit jarring, that, and sort of took away from the sympathy thing, or trying to understand Stephen Sayers as being this family man who was just doing this for his family. So, but I'll give Steve Wraith the credit. He did get in what he needed to get into the film with the script. It's just, it was let down by the fact that there was amateur acting because they weren't actors. There mustn't have been the budget there to ensure that the scenes were dressed appropriately to the decade that it was done in. And do you know what I think made it worse? Because the equipment they were using was so good, was so high grade, it sort of magnified when things weren't done at a top level. And that's the only sad thing about it. I think what it is, This could be a learning curve for Steve Wraith and what's his name, Richard Taylor. I'd say it as, and believe me, I'm not saying, right, oh my god, could I make a film like hell I could, because I know what it takes. I used to be taken out to film sets now and again when my papa used to work on them, and I know the intense work that goes into it. But one thing you have to do, you have to be prepared to do multiple shoots. You have to make time for it. You have to make sure your budget's there. And what you do, you never plan, unless you're with a big, massive studio that can afford to finance it. You never go plan for a scene that's beyond that budget. So if you've got a scene in a court and you can't afford a judge's wig, you don't do the scene. Or you film it differently so the judge doesn't have to be seen that way. Or you say, well, we can lose this one. Do we really need this scene when we can buy or hire? Good God, you could have put a collection house around and said, come on, we need a judge's wig. But, you know, it's things like that, and you learn from it. But you only, let's put it this way, it's not a mistake. What's the old saying? You never make mistakes, you make things you learn from. And that's what I see this as. Steve Wraith cutting his teeth in the genre, and this Richard fella cutting his teeth in the genre by the looks of it. You learn by your mistakes. And all that I'd say, next time, make sure the budget is there to get professional actors, because there's a reason they're called professional actors, because they make what's on screen believable. And also get someone, a professional, pay a professional editor to read the script, because as good as you are, even the best writers, script writers out there, always use an editor, professional editor, to look over it. Why? Because those professional editors are experts in the field and they earn the money. They can actually make what is going to be a poor film into a much, much better film, but they can't make a bad film a good film, let's put it that way. They can't, you know, and as I said at the beginning, you can never predict what's going to work. My view, and this is where I'll sum it up, good on Steve Wraith for trying this, good on all of them for trying it, you know. I'm not going to diss them for that, because I wouldn't have the intelligence or the guts to do something like that. But all that I'll say is, as the film, it doesn't work. The acting is terrible. The imparts, it just doesn't, unless you know Steve Wraith and you're interested in that, and you're interested in that, I can't see why you'd want to watch it for what. It just doesn't gel. But other than that, I think it's Steve's first attempt, isn't it? It's a very good first attempt, but it would have been better done on a much lower budget with much lower quality cameras and just put on YouTube. That way, it's not a blockbuster, it's not a mainstream, and I think, would I watch it again? No, I wouldn't. But that's because it's not I don't enjoy it. Do I think people who do enjoy those type of films will enjoy this? With all honesty, I don't. But, as I say, I wouldn't be able to do that. So that's one good thing. So I'll leave it there, my lovelies. Bye bye for now.